All right, everybody. Hey. We are excited. Our next guest here on International Podcast Day is somebody who is doing amazing things out there. Is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Bill Allen from the Seven Figure Flipping Podcast out here. And he is our next speaker on International Podcast Day. So good morning, sunshine. Good morning, Bill. How's it going today?
Good, Scott. How are you?
I can't complain, man. Still on my first cup of coffee, which is good, but I'm sure I'm going to be on quite a few more as we go through the 12 hours here, 10 hours a day, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how you're going to talk for that long. I would go crazy. My voice would be gone. It's tough. This is incredible. So thanks for putting this together. I think it's really cool. I've never seen anybody do this before. This is awesome.
Well, we're honored to have you, man. Thank you for jumping on and volunteering. But let's learn more about you, Mr. Allen. Tell us about Seven Figure Flipping and kind of your podcast journey, and then let's go from there.
Yeah, mine's probably a little bit different than some of the people that came on. Like I was a military pilot. My background is in the Navy, so I flew helicopters and airplanes for the Navy. I was active duty for 15 years, and I kind of slowly eased into real estate for a few years while I was active duty, and then I joined this mastermind group called Seven Figure Flipping. It really ramped up my journey. So I was actually like a paying member of this community when the guy whose podcast that I run now, he started the podcast and built this community on the podcast. It was called the House Flipping HQ podcast at that time. And then about a year and a half ago, I bought the company, rebranded a lot of stuff, changed the name of the podcast, but kind of archived a lot of the back episodes and stuff and just kind of started running with it and took it over and changed a little bit, changed the kind of the intro, some of the messaging, some of that stuff, but just primarily inherited it with the purchase of a company. So I didn't specifically come about like I'm going to be a podcaster, and I remember this identity struggle basically in the beginning of taking over the podcast of like this thing, it was like brought in the majority of the people into the mastermind group, into our live events and all that stuff. So the podcast was well listened to already, and one of the assets that I purchased basically. So is interesting. I had this identity struggle at the beginning of taking over this podcast. How should I be the one taking it over, running it, that kind of stuff, And so, and I didn't even know, I didn't have a microphone. I was just on my headset and all this stuff. So it's evolved a ton. So if you go back to July 1st, 2019, you listen to the first episode, Bill's taking over the podcast and the company and all this stuff. The audio's junky, the video's so bad. I just kind of learned along the way of, upgrading some stuff like that. And so that's kind of like my podcasting journey. It was like, hey, you bought this company, it comes with a podcast. You should probably run it and manage it and keep it going. And that's kind of it. So then it was about, okay, what do I want my message to be? What do I want to put together? What should the episodes be? How do you structure it? What's the system in place for uploading it and doing all that stuff? The back end of the podcast, I had no idea about because it wasn't my piece of the pie when I was helping run the company. So big learning experience. It's been about a year and a half now. I put out about 2 to 3 episodes a week. So, I don't know, I've probably done, a couple hundred episodes about this point, got some great people on the show, like some of my idols and authors and things like that. It's been really cool and fun to run.
Good stuff. That's such a unique, different approach. Most people start off from square one and they don't think about the fact, a podcast has been out for a while, is an asset they can actually purchase. And if you think about all the millions of podcasts out there, but how many of them have built an audience and then stopped and left their audience kind of hanging? That's one of the things that we've looked at doing too. Is okay, let's see who's got a podcast, who stopped 6 months ago, and see if we can acquiring that audience by putting your own spin to it, because people are looking for content, they're hungry for it. And have you seen that? Did you see an immediate kind of dip as you changed some things, as people got accustomed to you, or did it just kind of blossom unexpectedly?
Well, looking behind the scenes of the podcast, what I saw. So what I did was when I took over the company, I kind of analyzed what had been produced, where people came from. I'm an engineer, so I'm mechanical engineering background, aeronautical master's degree. I'm an engineer, numbers, data, turning the dials, mad scientist behind the scenes. I'm not the most I don't get filled up by socializing with a bunch of people and going to big events. And I'm not a huge extrovert. People might think that I am, but I'm a closet introvert. And so I put it on, but my battery drains really fast. So I love that stuff, the details. So I went and looked at the data and I was like, you know what? This is where the majority of people follow us and know us. I looked at the downloads. I looked at all that stuff. And I looked at trends over the past. And what I noticed personally was that I feel like we weren't serving the audience as well as we could over the 6 months before I bought the company, or a year almost. Like, it's kind of become more of a sales platform and marketing platform as opposed to a content delivery platform where we're leading with value. And it's more like, hey, look and see what's behind the scenes. If you want to apply for a mastermind or you want to join the program, then click here, you know? And so what I wanted to do is I actually saw, and I'm getting to the answer of your question, I promise, just to end around way. And what I saw was that what we could really do is kind of like revive that podcast to deliver value and content and bring new people on and actually have a series and a theme and things that we're doing to help people through what they're going through. Like, what are the questions that are asking? How can we answer it? And really come with the servants, like a service in mind. Like, how can we serve you? And then you're going to want to come check us out, go to our website, buy something, come to an event, you know, those kind of things. And instead of just like, hey, this stuff's awesome, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. And so I really saw an uptick in instead of like a drop, we actually saw an increase and a surge in it, because I think we came out, and people already knew me. So it's not like I just bought the company and I just came in. Like, I was the COO of the company. So I had done a couple podcast episodes. I had been on the podcast a bunch. I was like the MC at the live events. I was, the fulfillment director inside the mastermind group. So I was running all the events. I was running all the coaches, all that stuff. So it wasn't like the community didn't know who I was. So that was a big plus too. Like, if you're just buying a podcast and going on and they're like, I don't really like this guy or gal, you know, this just isn't my thing, and they're turn it off, you know? But it just seemed kind of natural. And then we actually saw a huge uptick in it. Like, I've seen actually more downloads, more subscribers, more following, more, like downloads. If we put out like some free content or something to download, there's been a spike in that. So I think it's just about understanding what the people that are listening want and need. And I've realized that like more people are tuning in, more people are downloading it, because we're actually giving them what they want, as opposed to feeling like they're being sold to or marketed to, you know? So I think just that change, it was pretty quick that we were able to kind of like revive the podcast a little bit after maybe like 6 months. And I've seen that, just like what you said, people will shut it down or not put out a new episode for like 6 months or a year. And it's a challenge to kind of get that thing going again and kind of shock it back. But we never stopped putting out content and episodes. It's just kind of, we shift the focus a little bit, change some of the branding, people reaching out like, I love the new intro, I love the cover, I love all this stuff. And it was fun to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of times things can get stale, and your audience can grow stale too. If they see things getting stale too, they're like, okay. And when you can refresh, it's like rehabbing a property, putting a fresh coat of paint or lipstick on a pig, you can make it look fresher. And rehab, not saying they flip the podcast, but do a little rehab to it to bring it back and fresh again, right?
Yep. And, so I saw that, and I have a tendency to talk. So I do kind of longer episodes, interview style on this podcast. And I know that people want like shorter bites and shorter content and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people, like I just did a podcast with Annie Duke. I don't know if you know her, she's a poker player. And we talked for 2 hours and 40 minutes. We didn't even hit record till about 45 minutes into our conversation. We were just getting along so well. We had blocked off like a half an hour each, and she's like, my afternoon canceled. I was like, I'll cancel my afternoon. Let's just talk. And we ended up doing a 2 hour podcast. And that's like Jocko style podcast. I never go 2 hours, but I'm rarely can do something in 30 or 45 minutes. It's more like an hour. Yeah. And so when I realized that, what we did recently, about 3 months ago, was I said, you know what? I'm just going to start another one. Like, I'm going to start one where we can put out 10 to 15 minute content that's specifically for an event that we put on. And then we can just give like little clips of what people want, like just answering one question. Like, what's the question that they have? Let me answer it. And then figure out how we can take that content and do something else with it. So like, can we put it on YouTube, or can we put it on our website or on social media or something like that, to have more devourable type content? Because there's a lot of people that will listen to a 1 hour interview with somebody, but there's a lot of people that the interesting thing that I realized is in this pandemic is what I saw was I was trying to keep my listener base level. And when I really started thinking about it, I was like, man, I'm not even listening to my own podcast, because I usually do. I listen to Game Film, like, how did I do? How can I get better? How was the interview style? What can I change? What can I adjust? And I don't think it's, like egotistical or anything. I think it's just the fact that I'm actually trying to get better, right? But I was like 5 episodes behind. I was like, I'm recording it, but I can't even listen to it because people weren't driving to work. They're not going out. They're not in the gym. They're not doing all that stuff where they normally devour that stuff. And so we saw that drop, and I was going like, I was kind of beating myself up. I hadn't figured it out. It's just the fact that where do people listen to your podcast? Like where? And so then I said, okay, well, to get in front of them, maybe what we need to do is we need to create something shorter where they can listen to it on 2 times speed in 7 or 8 minutes. And so I went about doing that. And that was kind of like the next step for us to kind of figure out right now during this time, how we put out stuff that people really need. So that was me creating a new podcast, new cover, new everything, trying to move listenership over there and kind of like push them both ways and see if I could do that. But I'll tell you, it's hard. Like putting out now 4 episodes a week is a lot more challenging than 2. And
that's a big thing too, but that's good is knowing what your audience is, and then you're able to serve them in that servant leadership aspect. You say, hey, if you want the long form content, the long conversation, here you go. But if you only got a few minutes and you need that bite-sized McNugget type of content, here you go as well to serve it, because everybody's got different listening and travel habits. I want to bring something back to what you said about how one of your podcasts is about helping put people into an event. You mentioned that a second ago. How has that evolved over the last 6 months for you? Are you looking to move that to a virtual event, or have it as a virtual event, or just postponing things, or doing more where it's feeding more of the longer content?
Yeah. So the event space has changed significantly. We do a lot of live events. Our mastermind, the fulfillment side of our mastermind company is 3 live events a year typically, and really 4 every quarter. We do a live event typically. And we haven't done a live event since February. In February, we went on a cruise, and this was like the first ever cruise that we did. It was so amazing. We got back and docked, and it was like, there's some crazy virus in China that's stranding other cruise ships out in the sea and everything. It's just fortunate we got that in. And then since then, we've become like virtual event gurus. Like we are really tried to dial in the virtual event to make sure that it's as impactful as possible. Like the extroverts are still not happy, but we're getting them there to the point where they are starting to feel better. So we have a live event every year. This is our 5th year. It's called Flip Hacking Live. So you probably know Funnel Hacking Live. We just totally ripped off Russell's event name, and he was cool with it. So that's another piece of the asset that I bought, right? It's an event space. And what we do is at the event, we do 3 full days, like long days, about just delivering value. Like what can we show you, what systems and processes that we're doing in the real estate business, the wholesaling and flipping side, to just give you that system in that 30 or 45 minutes where you have it and people pay, they fly, they get a hotel, they do all that stuff. And so our event is in like 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks. It was supposed to be in Orlando. And about 2.5 months ago, it was about 3 months before the event. And just to give everybody context, we plan this event for 7 months. Like I work with the event planner for 7 months out. We start planning the 3 days. We plan the hotel. I got the hotel booked over a year ago. All this stuff, it goes into play on this stuff. I start hiring keynote speakers and who am I going to put here, and kind of moving the pucks around to figure out the best journey I can take you through over 3 days. And all of our marketing, we had sold 400 tickets to this event already, before all this stuff happened. So at the year before, we sell tickets to the event for next year at a discount. And so about 3 months before the event, I had to make a decision. And my event planner called me, and she's the same person that does events for Russell, for Tony Robbins, for Dean Graziosi. I mean, you name Jeff Walker, you name the kind of like live event people out there, and this company does their events too. And so she said, Bill, you're the only one still holding out for a live event in all of 2020. And actually through March 2021, and I was like, what? Like, are you serious? Nobody else thinks that this can happen? And so we were planning a live event, a virtual event, and a hybrid event. So that's the 3 events that I was planning, all very different events. And I said, all right, fine, you got me. I still remember exactly where I was. We were just getting ready to put on a virtual event of ours that was like a virtual accelerator to sell tickets at the end. I had this offer planned at the end of this accelerator event to sell a package, live package for the live event. And I was like, crap, I got to make a decision right now because I'm about to go on this virtual event this morning, like in an hour. And I'm talking to the event planner. She calls me with like a 911. And I'm like, all right, let's just go virtual. Let's do it. 100% virtual. I don't know what it looks like, but everybody else is going to do it. Like Tony Robbins is doing a huge, UPW is going virtual, all this other stuff. Like they got the tech. We're going to build out a studio. We'll make it the best that we can. And so we went 100% virtual. And I'm so glad because over the last 2.5 months, at least I've been able to focus on one event and make sure that I could serve the audience as best as possible, as opposed to planning 3 different events. And people are uncertain if they want to get on an airplane and go to a hotel. The thing is, like, with the live event, everybody wants the 2019 live event that we put on. They want that right now. And it's like, I can't give you that. Like, we can't even get close to that. So what you're telling me that you want doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. It's like, this doesn't actually exist. So there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not going to this virtual event. I just want to go to a live event. Like, okay, fine, but you're going to be sitting 6 feet apart. They're going to be taking your temperature on the way in. We're going to beef up security. There's no buffet. There's no food. You actually, if you have a temperature, you can't even get in, even though you bought a ticket for $1,000. You're going to buy an airplane ticket, a hotel. You're not sure. Are you going to wear a mask? We're not going to wear a mask. Like, what are the regulations? And just a lot of unknowns and things that and it was in Orlando, Florida, and Orlando was spiking. Things were going crazy. Disney World was still shut down a couple months ago. And I was like, I don't know where this is going. So we went all virtual, long story long, 100% virtual event. And I'm really excited about it. There's some things that we can do. This might be our only opportunity to kind of force us into the space, but it's not like, I'm not going to be here, like in my studio here in Nashville. I'm not going to be on a screen like this. We're building out a studio in North Carolina. We're going to present from stage. I'm flying the keynote speakers out there. So we're actually paying for the keynote speakers, like they're full price, get them on a plane, not presenting from their home or anything. We have TVs all around where I can see every single person. It's like you're presenting to an audience. And we have multiple cameras. We'll have a roaming camera. We have a custom dashboard that we built out with our own tech that you can jump in, click on, point system. We have sponsor booths. We have network sessions, breakouts, like stuff. When you go to a live event, I can't get on stage and say, hey, welcome. I'll tell you what, everybody get in groups of 4 and tell everybody where you're from, what you do, and what you're trying to get out of this event. So just huddle up, like turn your chairs around and get together for a little bit. And then in 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you guys all to be quiet and you're going to come back and listen to me again. I'm never able to do that at a live event. But at this event, I can hit a button and I can break people out into groups of 4 or 5. They can do that and I can suck them right back in when I want to, and I can hush them up and put them on mute and bring them back in. And we can do that over and over for breakouts, networking, different questions, different workshops, things like that throughout an event that we wouldn't normally be able to do at a live event. So there's a lot of things that we can do virtually that we're not able to do live. And with the right tech and the right people that have the experience, like we have the pioneers of that space right now. And I'm just thankful that like they're a part of our company and are working with us. So pretty cool. I'm going to have fun.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I've been doing virtual big events for 5 years, and have anywhere from 300, 1,500 people on for 3 days. There's a lot of great things you can do to duplicate that in-person networking to make it a win-win across the board. If you just get a little creative or brainstorm with some of the people out there and realize that, hey, it's not going to be exactly, yes, we would love to be high-fiving, sitting next to each other, standing. You learn a lot of stuff sitting down and breaking bread with the people you're listening to.
Well, the introverts are going to love it. The introverts are going to be like, yes, like, when we get a networking session in person, I'm actually pretending to be on my phone. I don't want to talk to anybody. And the extroverts are going to, like, we will get the extroverts. We'll get them halfway there. Right. They're still going to need those hugs and high fives. But I think, the cool thing about that is they could set something up locally with a couple different people and meet up with them and have that kind of environment, maybe in an Airbnb or a hotel that they go to or something like that too. So there's a couple options for them. And we are working really hard to make sure that we're serving the extroverts and the introverts in our community. So like January is going to be an interesting mastermind event that we do. So I've got some plans for that. Like, how do we serve the people that want to be in person and the people that don't?
One of the things that we did with our event that we do virtually, we turned it into its own podcast. We did its own special series podcast that we released 6 months after the event, because those that have bought the replays, they get their value out of it. But then, okay, if you don't want to listen to replays, let's throw it out there for 6 months later. And we've seen an additional 100,000 downloads in roughly 6 months from that. That leads to the other podcasts and stuff like that. What are your plans to incorporate the podcast, or what have you seen with all this stuff, with your virtual ticket sales and virtual things going on? Has the podcast, with you pushing it on there, maybe talking more about that, has that seen a much bigger impact on the people opting in and signing up for that?
Yeah, last year I bought the company in July, our event's in October. So I had 3 months to fill the event. And it was a new owner, it was a new expectation, new event, all this stuff. And so what I did was I looked back to the year before, and pretty much every ticket that we sell pretty much comes from the podcast. A lot of them do. So that is huge. About 3 months prior, we really start kind of launching the series on, we might play like you said, play a replay episode, like a replay presentation. Like right now, I'm bringing people on every week. We do 2 a week, and I'm even dropping like a third bonus episode in there each week now to bring on a potential speaker to talk about what they're going to speak about, the changes that they made over the last year, what they're going to talk about, things like that. I see ticket sales come from that for sure. Now, it's interesting what you said about, presenting the event. The podcast that I created, that other one, was called the Flip Hacking Live podcast, which is the same name as the event. So what I wanted to do, and I launched it 3 months prior with a full plan to, like, that podcast is specifically designed to give them bite-sized chunks of what they should expect at this event. And so what I did was I actually put on a couple of I took maybe 10 or 15 minutes from the previous event, so last year's event recording, and I gave them that like one nugget from that, like answer one question and say, like, wouldn't you love to get the full episode, like the full presentation, right? And all the visuals, all the video. And so then if they use the code from that podcast we have a promo code in Eventbrite, then they could get the past recordings from the last 4 years. And so that was a bonus that we kind of rolled into a ticket sale here in the virtual event if they listen to that podcast. And we have a special code there so I can track people who are listening to that podcast and putting in that code. And so we did that with the last 2016, 17, 18, and 19. What I did was I went back and I looked at all the recordings and I handpicked the ones that were really good and still current. So you're not watching, you don't have to go watch 50 presentations. We probably have 20 presentations per 3 days total. So, you got 80 presentations. There's probably 23 or 25 in there. So I did the work up front so that they can go watch it and say, okay, I can watch all of these and they're still valuable today. We got rid of the stuff that it's just not current information and not something that I would use today, and don't waste your time. So that's one thing that we did. It's interesting that you say that now. I wonder what we could do with the recordings this year for next year, but I usually kind of grab chunks, or I'll put a whole presentation on the big podcast that we have and say, this is what you can expect at the event this year. So they get a taste of it and things like that. And then I'll usually bring the speakers in over the last couple months. I have some big keynote speakers. I'm interviewing one of the big keynoters that we have next week, and we'll put it out right on Thursday next week, kind of last chance. Here's some information about him. Don't miss it. But yeah, it's hard because some of the speakers that I've been bringing in recently, it's a challenge to be able to resell their content or to repurpose their content or put their keynote out on the podcast. Right. So this year is the first year that I really negotiated hard with them to say, I'm going to be able to sell your presentation combined with mine, not individually. I won't individually package it. I won't market it. I won't put it out in the public. It'll be locked out in the membership site. But this is the first year that I got permission from everybody, and I had to pay more to get permission from everybody to use their stuff in my package. So now we sell this VIP all access pass that has an extra cost to it to get the recordings, but they're getting everything. Like last year I had Jocko come to our event and speak, and I wasn't allowed to use his presentation in our recordings. And unless you came to that event, you donated to the charity, and then I could give it to you there. So I couldn't resell it to anybody that missed it. I couldn't put it out on the podcast. I can't do any of that stuff. I just didn't have permission. So that's the challenge sometimes for us. But I like that. I could create, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with that Flip Hacking Live podcast after the event. Right now, it's so much work, And so I'm trying to figure it out right now. What do we do with that? Do we just stop it and then start it up, 3-6 months prior to next year's? Do we slow it down? What do we do? So starting a new podcast is tough. I don't have nearly the same downloads and everything that I had on the last one. I did do a contest to get reviews. So we have over 100 reviews on that podcast in the first week. So I gave away an iPad. And so I gave away an iPad, Apple Pencil, the whole setup that I use since January 1st this year to increase my productivity. Did a contest to try to get a bunch of reviews. So we got over 100 reviews on that podcast in the first week. I was really trying to figure out how to get into new and noteworthy. I was trying to hack the code, but I need more downloads. I need more shares. I need more people to see it. It's challenging. So everybody out there that's listening to this, that's trying to start a podcast, just know that it's not easy. And I have a podcast that downloads 25,000 episodes, downloads per episode in the first 90 days or so, the big one. It's we have like 5,000 hardcore listeners in the first week of that thing. And so I was pushing them there, and I was only getting a couple hundred in the first week per episode. So it's not easy.
No, it's not. Where do you see yourself in the next 12 to 24 months with everything? I know obviously the virtual event and things like that, but you're forward thinking like I am. I'm already, where are we at in mid of 2021 as far as marketing and what we're focused on? What's one of the things that you're looking at with your podcast as far as the future?
So I have right now, I'm having like a strategic conversation with somebody else about how we can do something together. And I really, as far as the podcast goes, what I've learned over this past, I don't know, 3-4 months is that just not to overextend myself. Like I added this other one in, I thought, oh yeah, I can do that. And I can also build a YouTube channel, and I can do all this stuff that I'm doing right now. And I definitely overextended myself. And everybody looked at me and said, you were, and I'm the kind of guy who's like, I got it, no problem. Like, don't worry. And then, because you're under the assumption that everything's going to go right when you do that. Like, and everything never goes right. It always goes wrong. Like all this stuff starts blowing up, and then things get dropped. And right now I have to put together a podcast for Friday's episode of the Flip Packing Live podcast. And I don't have anything. Like right now, I just haven't planned out far enough in advance. I'm getting in the weeds. I'm stuck. I haven't been able to get ahead. So I would say for the podcast, I think that I am going to consistently put out our 2 episodes a week for the 7-Figure Flipping podcast, and be really, really like plan ahead to figure out what is going to be, what do people want to hear? What do they need? And then I also want to figure out how to get to that Dream 100, like really get in front of those people. Cause I went hard, and I got some great guests. I got some people and it's almost like more self-serving. I get to talk to people that I want to talk to that are on my list. So we kind of like slowed down on that, because 2 or 3 months from Flip Packing Live is all about who's going to be speaking there. So we're going to go hard in the paint on those folks coming up. Like I'm going to figure out how to get some of these bigger people on the podcast and really make sure that we do that right. And also we use it to kind of raise awareness. I run I'm a Tennessee volunteer director for Operation Underground Railroad, which fights human trafficking, sex trafficking for children. And we use the podcast a lot to kind of get that message out. So I want to do some more of that too. It's just really kind of share the awareness there, open people's eyes to what's going on. And I don't have anything like huge planned. I do have this partnership that's coming up that's going to be really exciting that we're going to do, but it's somebody else who already has a podcast, and we're going to kind of work together to do some cool stuff together.
Good stuff, Bill. Good stuff. Definitely looking forward to it. You guys are doing a great job out there. You might need to hire an assistant just for everything you're doing. You got that down. Right?
I have a full-time assistant.
Another one just for your marketing, brother.
No, we do. We need a marketing director. We need like a full-on digital marketing director. We had somebody, it just didn't work out with him. And then it was so close. It was like 4 or 5 months from Flip Packing Live. And I said, look, I've been doing the marketing for so long. This didn't work out. It was 3 months of our time. We lost 3 months. I went back in time. I just need to hit it hard. Right after Flip Packing Live, our ad goes up. We already have it written. We have this scorecard of who we're going to hire, how we're going to do it. And we're going to start going out and building out that arm of the company for sure.
Good stuff. What's the best way for our listeners on here, people watching this now or in the future, to connect with you?
Obviously the podcast, check out the 7-Figure Flipping podcast. We got one called Flip Packing Live podcast. I have no idea what's going to happen to that thing after October. We have an event called Flip Packing Live. You can go to flippackinglive.com and check that out. But 7figureflipping.com, YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. We got it. So, yeah, I'm around. I think anybody listening to this probably cares about the podcast. You can check me out there.
Perfect. Good stuff. Well, I want to say thank you again for coming on International Podcast Day and just sharing such great stuff, such a great contrast, doing some big things, taking over another one that you were already on there, but buying a company and then using it to leverage your event and doing it on a regular basis to fill your mastermind. Such great stuff, Bill. Love it. Our audience loved it as well, too, for you.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for having me, and good luck. Like, I think this is really cool. I saw your poster. I recognize a couple people from the mastermind that we're in. So I think you got a lot of cool guests and a lot of different people in different worlds and industries. It's pretty fun. So I hope that you do okay talking all day.
Oh yeah, this is something that we do on a pretty regular basis. So I'll be fine. There's sometimes people do most of the talking for the hour or the half hour, which is good stuff.
That's true. Yeah, and in my case, it's usually me. Yeah.
Hey, nothing wrong with that's what you're here for. 30 minutes at a time. So
I have
thanks
to
so much.
remember that on my podcast. I have to listen twice as much as I talk, and sometimes it's a challenge. So I like
Yeah,
over. I'm like, oh, tell me about this, and we did this, and this isn't your time, Bill. Shut up. So
the whole God ratio. God did give us two ears versus one mouth. Amen to that, brother. Well, be safe out there, and look forward to hanging out in person sometime soon. All right.
yeah, absolutely, Scott. See ya. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.